World of Warcraft has been the reigning champion of MMOs since its release in 2004. Now, 18 years later, Blizzard are releasing Dragonflight, their 9th expansion for the game. 18 years is an incredible amount of time for any game to stay relevant, so naturally there have been many changes along the way. One big change that seemed to have gone relatively unnoticed by players is how Blizzard moderates their game. Currently, if you have an issue in World of Warcraft, you open a ticket in-game, and a support representative known as a Game Master, or GM, will answer your ticket and resolve it using the dedicated Blizzard support chat. Typically, GMs are responsible for things like missing item restoration, reclaiming hacked accounts, and general day-to-day player issues. Back in the older days of WoW, however, things were done a bit differently. Old-school GMs still resolved player issues, but they did so in a much more direct and involved manner. Being a GM was more akin to being an in-game god as opposed to a faceless support rep. Game Masters controlled an in-game character and would often roleplay as someone living in Azeroth while resolving player issues to maintain immersion. These characters could do incredible things, such as teleport themselves or other players anywhere in the world, transform into or spawn any creature or character in the game, instantly kill everything in a 30-yard radius, and tons more. This created some incredibly unique scenarios for players who had the lucky and sometimes not so lucky chance to interact with them directly. Searching YouTube or old WoW forums, you can find some fun encounters that players had with these GMs, such as this clip here by YouTube account Spaviel.
Make a straight line.
Straight line. Go, go.
Make it hard. Go, 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 go.
You can see the Game Masters having fun with the raid group, transforming the players into animals, egging them on while doing nothing to help fend off mobs, and eventually spawning a giant chicken for them to fight.
El pollo grande.
El pelo grande.
Once these encounters started getting posted online, we began to see more and more players share their stories about their interactions with GMs. Screenshots started showing up on forums that showed how some GMs would tell WoW-based jokes, gift players with items, and just be nice to engage with. It was a fun, unintentional addition to the game where getting to actually see a GM back then felt like running into a legendary character. Almost like these real people became part of the lore and story themselves. This feeling was further reinforced when players started to hear about the GM Island. Having a GM as a friend or using the /who command in the game would reveal that the GMs were frequently in a zone called GM Island. It wasn't long before players found where it was located and began hypothesizing what they would find there. Getting to GM Island became a game of its own for some, separate to the actual content in WoW. There were some photos and forum posts that claimed to have successfully made the perilous journey, but it wasn't until 2007 that we would get video evidence of someone exploring the island. YouTube user Patchy-chan uploaded this video titled "Going to GM Island and Getting Banned." This seems to be the first legitimate video uploaded to the internet of a player reaching GM Island on a live server. They claim to have done so by using a model editor. This is a program that could spawn in solid land underneath the player even though it isn't actually there in-game. This allowed Patchy-chan to reach GM Island in a decent time and avoid the fatigue damage that would usually kill players. So now that we finally got a video, what was on this fable island? Honestly, not much. The island contained a small dock that was at the foot of a path which led to the GM Mansion, a large house using the model from Stormwind City Command Center that was surrounded by a unique wall. A small graveyard by the shore, and trees filling in the rest of the island. There was also the Interrogation Room. This was a textureless room hidden deep below GM Island that's been theorized to be intended for interrogating cheaters or repeat code of conduct offenders. As it turns out though, GMs were never actually able to access this room, and almost all of the examples you see of its use online come from private servers. While a fun rumour, the GM Island was really just a spawn point for Game Masters. Although, to honour the impact the island had on the WoW community, an official short story was written about two GMs named Ari and Tuskfire, who lived on GM Island. These characters appear nowhere in-game, and this seems to be the only reference to GM Island and Game Masters within official lore. Unfortunately, as of 2019, the GM Island has been removed from all official versions of the game and is now only accessible on private servers. So what happened to the WoW Game Masters? And why don't we see current Game Masters interacting with players like they used to? Well, Turns out things got a little out of hand with the whole displaying their awesome power for everyone. According to this Reddit post by a previous GM, some game masters became obsessed with the attention that came with these player interactions, and began bending over backwards to appease them. A website called WoW Blues, which was a fan-made site to track any and all GM posts known as Blue Posts, became the hub for talking about Game Master encounters. To quote Reddit user Ektar, "With WoW Blues, GMs also for a while became obsessed with getting their name on it. There was a vicious circle of one-upmanship where the customer care was a bit too much make them happy, rather than educate and help them. Player responsibility went out the window and it was assumed that GMs would do anything and reverse any action. This all added to increased queue times and a kind of self-generated taken for granted element of the player base. When you're working on restoring 3 hacked accounts and the guy beside you is turning a raid into leper gnomes, you start to get a bit frustrated. This behaviour created a precedent among players, who expected GMs to be able to do anything they requested and would get upset if told no. The increase in ticket response times and growing demands from the players became very problematic for the support staff. This obviously reached the higher ups at Blizzard, and so new and more stringent regulations on player interactions were introduced. A new support system was also brought in so that GMs didn't need to be visible to players as a character anymore, the current system that is still in place today. No longer allowed to create these amazing displays for players, the mysticism behind GMs began to fade, and their once awesome power fell into obscurity. Game Masters are still very much part of the game, only it's unlikely we as players will ever get to see them in action again. We still get snippets of their old ways from streamers and content creators, but those will be very rare in isolated situations. For now, they'll remain in slumber, banning, restoring, and waiting for the day that they may return to their former glory. Thank you very much for watching. Please subscribe if you'd like to see more from me. Also, let us know if you have an interesting GM interaction you'd like to share in the comments. See you soon.